Hi, welcome to New American Jank. A format so good we janked it up only 5 episodes in. Now we are doing this as an audio podcast for all of people of Earth to listen to free. And now the videos and extra content are all on our Patreon, patreon.com/American Jank. um this is kind of like the way we are trying to like figure out the way people consume content on the interwebs and maybe pay for it. And we're trying to figure out the best way to like get this out there and still be able to like save something for our supporters and people who can actually fund what we do here. And if you can't, that's okay. We want to spread the voices and conversations about video game pop culture around the world. And today we are talking with a guest straight from Argentina, just like the Falklands. It is the man himself, one of the developers behind the new unreleased video game Atuel. Please welcome Pablo. I forgot to ask your last name. Say it on camera now. Me and you together. Pablo.
Quarta.
Quarta.
Quarta. Yes.
Quarta.
That's really cute. It's very fancy.
It's fancy. And Quarta. I didn't know Quarta was a last name.
It is.
Fourth.
It's Wednesday over there in Brazil,
Yes,
isn't it?
it is.
Quarta-feira, yeah.
It was yesterday. Your name is literally yesterday.
I
is a Wednesday, is a Thursday.
I come to you from the past. Yeah. Just to be on the show.
Just to be on the show, and with a warning from the past and the future, right? Because there's a message in the game. We'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about the past then, Pablo. Pablo, thank you for coming on the show, first of all.
No, thank you for having me, for inviting me. I'm very excited.
Oh, cool.
I'm hearing about all these new Patreon formats. I'm very, very excited.
Patreon formats. That's all the kids want to hear about. Patreon formats. What's in the tier? What do I get? What are the badges? What am I getting? Are there t-shirts? Is there merch? And Pablo,
is there merch?
There's no merch. If we had to deal with shipping and all of that stuff,
that's right.
It would be a nightmare. But Pablo, you are in Argentina. Where in Argentina are you?
I am in Buenos Aires, in the capital city.
Right.
Not too far away from Brazil.
Yeah. I've never been to Buenos Aires actually. I've been to Mendoza. I love to spend a week there, and I want to go to Buenos Aires very much.
Mendoza is lovely.
It is. I had a great time. Got to ride some horses near the border with Chile. There, it's amazing. Great meat, great wine, lovely people, and living in Buenos Aires and playing games. When did it flick over to maybe I don't want to just play these games? I have some ideas to make into games.
Well, I made a lot of very bad decisions when I was younger.
Oh,
so
I feel like we've known each other our whole lives, Pablo.
So I studied originally. I studied English. I studied literature, right? And I was always very interested in more experimental formats, more experimental. I was a big fan of Italo Calvino, like so many game designers are, which it's just a cliche now. I feel very unoriginal. And I was very interested in interactive fiction and just the potential that games have to jank up narrative, to just mess around with it and do weird stuff. And so I was very into indie games and Twine and all that stuff. And as I got more into that, I'd just finished university. I had all this academic training for English, but I was really curious about all this other stuff. So I decided to study game design and programming, which, again, regrettable decisions in their own right.
Yeah.
But somehow that led to one of my professors hiring me on to one of their into their studio where they were working on video games, and one thing led to another, and now I'm part of a worker owned indie game co-op
That's
called
awesome.
Matajuegos. Yeah, it's just
Matajuegos. And
it's,
how many games that have you done with together there at Matajuegos?
so Matajuegos. We've been together since late 2015, early 2016. We've done a ton of very small, very personal games since then. Everybody in the co-op kind of making their own stuff. Some very queer games, some very autobiographical games, some activist games. We made two virtual marches that in order to support the legalization of abortion in Argentina when
Right.
that went to Congress. That was a law that went to Congress 2018 and 2020. We made virtual marches for people who couldn't go physically to the physical marches in Buenos Aires. And we kind of formalized into a co-op over the last 2 years and started kind of making slightly more ambitious games, slightly bigger games together. I think we made 4 games. Atuel is our 4th game as a co-op.
Nice. And is this your main activity nowadays as a developer?
Uh,
Is most of your time
so
spent there?
so I so for Matajuegos, I do a lot of production work, and I do a lot of some narrative design and editing work. I also do a lot of administrative stuff on the co-op side, but I also do a lot of freelance narrative design on more commercial stuff.
Right.
And I worked at a pretty big company for many years doing more commercial stuff that I wasn't very happy with.
Yeah.
Um, and right now it's Atuel. I'm like very dedicated to Matajuegos over these last few months, but I'll probably be looking for gigs sometime
Hey,
in the
so
future.
hey, Pablo, you guys are gonna check out some of Pablo's work later in
Mm,
this episode, and maybe later when you're checking out all of the
mm.
Matajuegos work. But yeah, hey, Pablo is up for doing some cool projects.
Hi,
Um,
over here.
so let how did the idea of making games and virtual marches and things like that of really just making using the tools of game development for activism and for this kind of expression come to you and the other people at Matajuegos?
Well, I think it was something that was just kind of it was an idea that was permeating kind of in the indie collectives for many years now. Ever since after Gamergate or during Gamergate, things there was a big section of the indie community that kind of took on that said politics are important.
Yeah.
We should be involved with this shit. And so can I curse? I feel
Yes.
like
Yes. Please.
American
Please.
Jack. Can I
Please.
curse? Okay, thank you. We should be involved, and we very much took that on the local scene. Much thought I took that idea, and we made a lot of different people in the co-op made a lot of some games about satire about Argentine politics, a lot of personal games about our own personal relationships with activism and with marches. During these last few years, for people who don't know, kind of the Latin American political scene, Argentina led kind of in the feminist politics, and kind of in the region. Um, we had very, very big feminist marches against, against abuse, against sexual violence. And so a lot of people in the co-op kind of made small games about that, about their personal relationship with that, about against a lot of the reactionism from the right that was coming out against all these very empowering, very powerful political strides that were happening in the country. Um, I think it's just because it's what we were doing, it's what we were thinking about, it's what we were talking about, and we made video games, and it wasn't hard. It's not like we're making a big commercial AAA game about feminist marches. We're making small twine games, and we can put them out. We can make impactful activism. When you're working with something like Twine, something like Bitsy, a tool that's very easy to spread online, that you can just put it up on any site and spread it around with a link. That's very powerful for getting the word out. That's very powerful for spreading the message. Anybody can play it on their phone. Anybody can access it. It's it's still a video game. It has limited reach, but it has a lot more reach than you might give it credit for.
And speaking of that, what was the reach? What did you see was the impact of those games and those efforts? Not only in terms of just g- the brute reach of it all and
Mhm.
numbers, but of like the feedback you got, or what people said to creators and yourself during that.
So we had a lot of very positive message, from like-minded people, from people who were kind of on the margins, and people who were kind of just getting into the issues. Some of our games, uh, we were told, opened up their horizons, opened up their mind to some of these issues, like activism hopefully does. That's kind of a lot of times the goal, and it kind of drives to direct action and drives people to get engaged. Obviously, it also causes activism also causes the opposite thing, which is people to clam up and to lash out when you're telling them about things they don't want to hear about, things that they should be doing that they don't want to do, or when you're going up against the status quo. So we also had some backlash, some of it, hate messages. Uh, Not too many hate campaigns. I think it was just the one, and that was over pretty quickly, thankfully, luckily. But we had all kinds of very funny messages from people we were being paid for by the government. Our games our free games, which we made in our own free time, were being paid for by the government as propaganda.
Oh yes,
That we would never.
something we are very used to here in Latin America. The free flowing money for arts,
Yes.
just the abundance of
Yes.
millions and millions of dollars for subsidizing arts that is completely abundant here in South America and the global South. Not at
Yes.
all in Hollywood and all of those movies paid for by the Justice
Yes.
Department.
We also got a lot of lovely feedback from industry people saying we would never make money making these kind of games. It seems like they got the point. Like
Yes,
they
yes.
were on top of it.
Well, yes. Well. Clearly, yes. You will never make money hand over fist by trying to help your brother and sister. Is is
Yes.
is is really the response you wanna
Yeah.
you wanna get.
So it was kind of mixed, but I think the people who we cared about, who we wanted to get the message out to, told us told us give us positive feedback.
And speaking of the people you cared about,
Hmm.
getting this message to, do you feel that um there's a the you guys were able to start and maintain a community of like-minded gamers there, and people who maybe kind of like got to know each other and got to find community because of Matajuegos' work.
I think there was certainly a moment in which that was very much the case, which I think there was a period. There was kind of the period in time in which I kind of got into the indie scene in Buenos Aires, which was around 2015, 2016, all the way to well, 20, yeah, 2017 maybe. Which there was a big indie community, very vibrant within the city. We were meeting up maybe every month, every other month. There were a lot of indie games. There was kind of a bit of a manifesto going on. We were very much trying to lead in that sense and get people to talk about all these things that were all these social and political issues that being in, were being hidden by the community that they weren't talked about even though they were present. We wanted to kind of surface all that, and I think that there was a very positive couple of years. There was a really interesting indie scene in the country. Then we got a very neoliberal government in, which kind of took away all the money that was being used to maintain those spaces, all the spaces in cultural centers, all the money that was going to art and to kind of our indie stuff. And that kind of dried up, and then the pandemic hit, and we all kind of scattered and isolated in a certain sense. Um, and we're seeing right now if we can get some of that back, as now that people are less wary about contracting COVID, even though they should still be very wary about it.
They
They're
should.
less
They should.
careful
I
than
I
they
I
are.
I warn our listeners and our viewers that I have a very stuffed nosed again this week,
Mm,
but it is not COVID, thankfully.
mm,
But yeah, get
mm,
your shots. Stay safe. Wear masks
mm.
when you're staying inside.
We have a
Wash
very
your
high
hands.
vaccination rate here in Argentina, over 80%.
Yes, here in
Been
Brazil,
finished.
it's very high as
Mm.
well. Despite all the efforts of the federal government to make it not
Yes.
so high. And so since we touched on it, the neoliberal politics we've been immersed into as Latin Americans and as South Americans the last few years,
Mm.
you guys just had you had a very neoliberal government running things. Your president was the son of a man behind um, privatizing the post office, actually,
Yeah,
which
great. Just a
it worked out so
exemplary
well that you
patriot.
have to actually expropriate it and make it state owned again. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big lawsuit that I don't think that'll ever happen, but there's a big lawsuit open because of all of that.
Oh yeah, and that is, I would believe, in Argentina as well, but in Brazil is like the post office is a big thing with gamers because like we like to import a lot of stuff, we like to import
Right.
games and just like gadgets and accessories, and especially today with like retro gaming and stuff like that, and collectors, and people think, well, if we privatize the post office, then
Yeah, that'd be
my
great.
gaming will be better. Turns out it's not that way, is
No.
it? No.
No, no, no. Turns out private business doesn't really care about you getting your stuff. It really
Yeah.
cares more about making money. Yeah,
Ah,
so
damn.
I don't know what they
So,
think about that. It just
ah,
kind of slipped.
yeah.
Slipped their mind.
Because right now here in Brazil and in the U.S. for years, people have trying to make the argument that, oh, we should privatize the post office. That is really
Yeah,
what's going on.
it's a great monopoly to have if you can control
Yeah.
all mail.
Oh yeah, no, it's good because those little towns where there's not enough people to be profitable to deliver mail every day. Yeah, we'll keep doing that. Yeah,
The
for
free
sure.
market will figure it out.
No,
Don't
no, no.
worry
Free
about it,
market is
guys.
going to totally serve the people first, and then figure out how to profit on it. Yeah. So, kids, mind your gaming, but also mind your post office. Your post office is a social service, should not be
Mhm.
privatized. Um, but then again, things are starting to look up. You think there after the pandemic, and kind of like you're kind of being able to rebuild this sort of sense of community and this closely knit group of games and game fans and game developers there.
Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of kind of communities that rose up during the pandemic that were a lot more, Discord based, a lot more online based, which are kind of meeting up together for the first time recently. We just had kind of our first big national video games exhibition since the pandemic,
Right.
since before the pandemic. And there were a lot of people meeting for the first time. And there's certainly a sentiment that there should be more events because this national event is a very industry based one. It's a very commercial based event, even though Atuel somehow got an award there.
Hey,
We don't know.
congratulations.
Thank you. Um,
Sometimes they do that.
and,
They'll give you
yes,
an award. They won't give you money,
yes.
but they'll give you an award.
We'll talk about it later because I have a lot of fun things to say about it.
Awesome,
Uh,
awesome.
but basically, there's kind of the voice is out in the air that we need to have more events that are less commercially focused, that are more about game devs meeting up and kind of more indie devs in particular meeting up, and maybe less public facing events. Even though that'd be great too, but just a space for us to kind of get back together, start talking again, start talking about the issues that we're facing, and kind of get that camaraderie back. We'll see if it happens. We'll see if it doesn't happen. I feel like the scene that I kind of grew up in, that I formed in, was a very specific scene, very specific political scene from 2015, 2016. I don't know what the issues. I don't know what the indie scene is like now. I don't know what it wants to tackle. How it's also there's also just different aesthetics and different games that they're responding to than we were responding to back then. So it might be something else. It might be the same. I don't know.
And do you feel that there's a growing audience for what you do and want to do, or is it kind of like you have to find a balance between the work you do for raising awareness and doing activism based game development and creation, and the stuff you make for to make a living and make products and sell.
Um, I think definitely with Atuel, we had an incredible reception here in Argentina. The game has been on every TV channel and on a bunch of radio shows, and it's been covered by a lot of press. So it seems like there's an interest. Definitely, it seems like if you can get it right, there's an interest in the public for games for games that approach uh, what's the word for extra, our everyday topics that deal with climate change, social issues. It seems like there's an audience there. We have to figure out how big that audience is. It says, we're not good at marketing. We're not good at business. We're not good at charging people for the things we do.
Hey,
We're not.
I get it. I get it. Right now we have one patron, and it's
No,
this show makes $2 a month. So I think
great.
we're good and we're together in this. And speaking of of reaching everyday topics and things people want
Yeah,
to see discussed more, and why are video games not a way to see it. I thought about I was thinking about Atuel the other day because we've been talking for the past few weeks about your game, and you sent us a build. Um and I was taking Uber back from the supermarket, and I was talking to the driver, and he was talking about we got to talking. I got to and I said that I talked about video games, and he was like, you know, um, I wish they would make video games about climate change, right? For like kids, because kids love video games, but they're all about shooting people. But
yeah,
they should be about more stuff, right? And it was too big of an issue to to broach in a Uber ride, but the sentiment is there. I think it's not just people like us who are like super nerdy and want to play indie games that are about messages and things, or people that are politically active that want or are open to seeing more diverse ways of playing and interacting with games and more diverse messages being there. But
yeah.
how do you reach those people? Because like Atuel, as an example, is still something very niche and very out
Yeah.
of reach for, I don't know, for most kids playing games, for example, right? How do you, without trying to make you into a marketing person,
Right.
which I get it, you're not, but like, how do you feel? Would you like the Atuel to be in like somehow be accessible to those people, or is it like this is a stepping stone of like we must this is for us right now, and we'll find the language that is super mainstream and universal eventually.
Well, I mean, there's two things there. On one side, unfortunately, we make games. I wish we had. I wish had we taken different decisions in our lives, we'd be making some kind of art form that was a lot more accessible, a lot easier to get into people's hands, and a lot more spreadable. Unfortunately, that's not who we are. We're making video games, and so that's the medium. That's the medium we're stuck with. We can make it as accessible as possible. However, Atuel is a free game that you download on itch for nothing, and you can play it on most Windows computers nowadays. That still leaves a ton of people out, but I'd say it's more approachable and more accessible than most video games within the medium.
Yeah.
Um, Having said that, there is something about reaching wider audiences and the exercise of reaching wider audiences and the practice of it that inevitably leads you to butt up against marketing practices and co-optation by the industry. It's an inevitable. That's their space. That's where they live. That's where those creatures are. And to a certain extent, I haven't had this discussion yet. It's not something that we've done at Matajuegos yet. But inevitably, if we wanted to port Atuel to the Nintendo Switch, for example, if we wanted to get it on Game Pass, we'd have to have those conversations to make it more accessible and to give it a bigger presence in the video game ecosystem. Oh
and
god, you
and
see, I
even
have
more than
to start
those.
using these words. The moment I have to talk about it, I have to start using these terms because that's
Yeah,
I have to enter the miasma of industry.
but and what about
Yeah,
mobile? Because I think that
yeah,
you and I, maybe even because of our age,
mm,
we go and think
mm.
mainstream. Oh, that means
Right.
consoles, but actually that means mobile.
Yeah, we've also been thinking about mobile. I think that the porting on the technical side to mobile is a little tougher. We'd love to. I want to do it, especially because I think it's a good game for mobile for a lot of reasons. Um, but yeah, I think. But that also means being on the Apple Store, being on the Play Store, figuring out pricing, figuring out what we're paying Google, what we're paying Apple, and how they visibilize it
Yeah.
on their side.
Yeah, because on their
Um,
side, they want games with microtransactions that they can get a little bit, a little percentage of every microtransaction in their pockets, and they want games that are constantly updated. So they hate games that are a finished work in the sense
yeah,
that Ashwell is that you have this kind of very straightforward narrative there. You're not going to be adding new challenges and hats
right.
and things like that, and so eventually they'll even delist you from those stores from not if you don't update those games after a while. Google will do it, Apple will do it. So it's very inhospitable, I guess, for the market out there as a whole for something for what you guys do. Maybe console is not as inhospitable, but mobile, which is the largest market and the market that reaches kids and people who of the lowest income brackets,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
I feel like so I went to this conference and I was invited to the business meetings because for various reasons I luckily we didn't have to pay for them, which
Awesome.
because they were quite expensive. And the thing I kept hearing was Atuel is a great game for Apple Arcade and for Netflix because it's you sit down, you play for half an hour, you have this tremendous audiovisual experience, and then you're done. So it's something that adds value to a catalog, but maybe somebody doesn't want to pay $5 for it.
Yeah. But maybe the
Um,
people who have Netflix and Apple Arcade are not the people that most
right,
need
that's the
access to
issue.
that game, right?
Yeah,
So it kind of ends up gentrifying content itself and content, and I hate the word
yeah.
content to art and expression and communication and entertainment. But
But that's what industry does. It co-ops.
it
That's
co-ops
why it's
everything.
there.
So it ends up doing this commodification of what we do, and because there's a message, and because that message is important in having social impact, the social impact actually doesn't happen because it's stratified
Right.
to people who have access, monetary access,
Mm,
right, to things that are
yeah.
locked away behind paywalls, be they paywalls on a news site or a Netflix subscription, Apple Arcade subscription, which in Argentina and Brazil, for example, also means that you have an iPhone, which is
Right.
many times more expensive than an Android phone, which are vastly the majority of mobile phones here. It's not the 50-50 war that is in the US or in Europe, by and large. So how I think that you guys you made it free and you put it out on itch because you know this, right? And looking at a broader spectrum, looking at our industry, how do you face these challenges? How do you think these challenges can be overcome on a long term basis of like, okay, how is it just going to be this kind of we make huge money maker games and then we use the money we make from those games to make these makes that don't make money to kind of make up for it and have a social message that can come across, and we don't have to, or do we keep these messages locked away in these you know gardens?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think in Matajuegos will ever be in favor of locking things up in gardens. I think we're very much against that, at least for the stuff we make within the co-op. but it's not a unique struggle. I think this is what artists have had to do since artists have been around, right? Finding patrons, finding ways to make art accessible, finding a way to make a living without kind of losing, you know, the message, the thing they want to do without. Um, there was a point I wanted to get to, but I went back in time and suddenly I've lost it. So I think we have to be okay with not being industry. I think there's a big sense of what's the word of there's a lack of confidence sometimes that I see in people making indie games or making people even making important indie games or important that they say, okay, this game is great, but it's not being recognized, it's not being valued, and it's. I think we have to be we have to be more. Okay, let me try to say. Let me see if I can get this out. We have to start paying less attention to the industry, to the commercial. We have to pay more attention to what we're doing on the peripheries, to what and build different networks. We have to build alternative networks. We're never gonna have the success we want and that we want our games to have on Game Pass and on Switch. Even that might be nice. We don't have to cut it out entirely. But if we're looking for games that do different things, that have different messages and function differently socially, we have to build alternative platforms and alternative systems for them. And that's going to be it's not going to get as much recognition. It's not going to get the kind of value that you see other games getting. It's going to mean having to deal with that on an emotional level. And the only way to deal with that on an emotional level is by building communities that support that kind of thing, and building indie dev communities that support one another. You know, I say that, and that's been happening. Since indie scenes have been around. I think sometimes the biggest issue that gets in the way of indie scenes really propping one another up, propping creators and games up, is really it ends up being human issues, a lot of drama, a lot of conflict, and but again, I think it's part of the beast. It's something you have to. It's something we need to be better about, and about
I
propping each other up. I think we need to feel less secure about not being up on the Game Awards, about not being, um, promoted on PlayStation Plus,
I love it.
and that kind of
I
thing.
love what you're saying. I love because I think that maybe sometimes we get caught up in the whole, oh, I'm going to change the system from within. But part of changing the system is seeing what parts of this system you can do without, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and well, I think that's a very inspiring message because I think that coming from South America and coming from the background we come from, there's a lot of that. You see a lot of that expressed by indie devs all the time. I'm like, oh man, it was such a dream come true to see myself in a Nintendo platform and get released on a console, on a PlayStation that I played as a kid, and all those things are major achievements for people that come from here, but also that it is not the only type of success that can be
right,
that you can think of, and especially for things that you want to, for the success you want to be the, oh, I want the success of this is to reach people and to have a social impact and to move forward this conversation and maybe push people into doing some action for this. um I think that, yeah, you got to take it. You got to, like you said, you don't worry about Game Awards or being on Game Pass for this, because the success for this is not measured by the metrics of the people who measure
right.
commercial success. And that's really good, and I feel very good that you're saying that you're feeling that support and that response of belonging and appreciation in your local community. How has it been outside of this marvelous, wonderful show that's having you on right now? How has it been getting the word out to the world?
We've been very surprised by the reception in Argentina. I think in Argentina the games the message got out. We were very lucky in how, even though we have no experience with marketing, really, none. But somehow we managed to contact the right journalists at the right time and kind of line it up so the word got out right before the game came out. The game came out, then we were part of this event, this national event in Buenos Aires last weekend. We won an award there, so everything kind of just ramped up on a messaging level, and somehow it ended up working
So
out.
you're saying there's some brand synergy going on?
Yes, exactly. There's some very there were some very calculated hopes that ended up panning out for us,
All right.
luckily. And
Calculated Hopes. Calculated Hopes is your new album coming out.
yes,
It's chiptune music. Calculated
mm-hmm.
Hopes' first single is "Bit
Math rock.
Dreams." It's math rock, yeah. And you
Um,
said you wanted to. You wanted. I felt in your voice
mm-hmm.
earlier that you wanted to
Oh yeah.
dish. You wanted to dish. You had some
Oh,
shade to throw around something about this event or this award you guys got or something.
like
Uh,
I don't want to be too mean because we're all struggling here in Argentina. We're all doing the best we can. There's some people who are, a lot more money. We're thinking a lot more about money than we are,
we
which
have an
it's.
expression in Brazil, and I think you're gonna understand it. You said you lived for a while with Brazilian, so fala mesmo, fala.
So the award we got, so there were only like 5 or 6 awards, and the one they were so gracious to award to us was best original idea, and I'm so upset. I'm so
It's a good
angry.
idea. Oh,
It's like we didn't have an idea. We made a game. We made a
yeah,
very
the
good
idea
game.
was years ago.
It was a finalist at a maze in Berlin this year.
Yeah.
They could have just said best original game. I would have been fine, but they
Yes.
didn't have to be so condescending about it, guys.
I feel you. I'm a judge on the IGF awards for GDC, and at least what they do there, the condescending award is the is less condescending. It's the most innovative.
Yeah, the
The
Nuovo.
Nuovo, yeah, the Nuovo,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's like it's still like it's still a word for the game. You made something innovative. It's not like
yeah.
great concept, guys.
Great
Ooh,
idea.
look at those.
Execution,
Hey, look at those
but
artsy guys, their ideas. Oh, so cute. But yeah, the best game is this one that made all this money. Oh, look at the engagement numbers. Oh, the conversions, the ROI, uh, 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 the cost per user acquisition on this one is
just
chef's
beautiful.
kiss. Yeah. So and let's talk about something that it is necessary to fuel activism and anything is energy, and what gives us energy more than anger and resentment? I would say nothing. Uh so
Exactly.
how you said you worked on big studio projects, stuff like that. Could you describe the feeling, like what was brewing inside of you before you were able to find this outlet of making games such as Atuel? Uh, what was kind of the feeling, and what were the kind of the things you were hearing that kind of were just pissing you off? Because maybe that's something that can help listeners of ours go, like, maybe it's going to unlock something in
Sure.
their minds, or at least people are gonna be felt seen, felt heard. That's important.
Yeah. So negative feelings I've had working in the industry. That's a
Negative
long list.
feelings can lead to positive outcomes. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I don't think that makes them worthwhile. However, I don't think you
No,
should
no.
chase out negative feelings. But
I
if you
think
have them, you
if you
can be able
have
to
them,
You can channel them. Yes.
exactly, you can find a way to deal with those negative feelings that leads to a positive outcome.
Right. So I think the one positive thing I learned from working in the industry was a lot of just responsibility was, I think, the big thing, and dedication, and how to work, how to really work with other people in a responsible way that didn't mean they had to crunch, they had to suffer. A lot of what I learned working in industries is how to defend oneself from exploitative business practices and how to do production well. How to do
Yes,
how to have a healthy production cycle.
yes,
That's really the big thing. How to work with others in a way
perfect,
that's
perfect.
respectful to them
I
and
don't work
respectful
with
to their health.
I don't work with video games directly in production, but
Yeah.
I work with production producing things like this, the podcasts and
Mm,
shows, and yes, I think the ability to value oneself's time and work and
mm.
effort, and also translates into being a good producer and into being able to go. So exactly, hey, so when are we going to do this? And when is this going to be budgeted out? And when were we going to work out the schedule? When is everyone going to be aware of this? So yes, yes, perfect point there. I think of like one of the ways to free yourself from being exploited might be to be a better manager than the people they're putting to manage you.
Yeah, so that was the thing I learned because quickly when I started working in the industry, quickly I was put into production roles just because people didn't know how. I'm a narrative designer. I do writing and I do narrative design, and nobody at the studio I was hired on to knew what narrative design was or how writing pipelines for work, how they integrated into the rest of the team and the rest of the production process. I didn't know either. I was new, but because I was the only person who understood what narrative design writing was, that my job was suddenly okay, produce it. And I was
Right.
like, oh sure, yeah, okay.
Well, I think
It's-
there's a parallel between being a writer and someone who works with narratives and being a producer is because you are able to see how this is going to unfold. You
yeah,
see where this story is going, and it is not good,
exactly,
guys. we must
exactly.
we must work out this first act here, or else this
Mm.
third act is going to be a boondoggle.
Right. So I think the my personal experiences were very frustrating in the sense that some of the projects I worked on were very long projects, which were creatively bankrupt, and the people taking the creative decisions were unwilling to listen to feedback from the people they themselves had hired on to give them creative feedback and to lead creative decisions, and would treat them poorly, screaming matches, ignore them. Uh, Purposely spark conflict between team members and different departments. Fun stuff that
Yeah.
leads to healthy work environments.
Uh huh.
And because it ended, and just um, really no clear idea that video games are an iterative process and need a lot of time to breathe and for kind of the experience to kind of bubble up from the iteration.
Right.
Um, it was very much, well, let's get it done, let's get it out, and when eventually things didn't work out because the game wasn't anything anybody had fun playing or fun doing, it was scrapping everything and starting again, or suddenly making everybody crunch to get it right. It was a lack of understanding of how game design and how game production really works, and a lack of listening to the very talented people they had hired on to be able to let them know. I think we had a really big project problem with management. Besides that, just the game dev scene, uh, coming from the tech scene can mean there's a lot of very reactionary people working with you. A lot of people who are very much leaning to the far right, and that can also lead to very very destructive work environments and very toxic work environments, especially when the work environment is already kind of a pressure cooker because of this mismanagement from the people at the top. So we had to deal with all of that stuff. I mean, I had to deal with all that stuff. The only thing I'm kind of thankful for is that being kind of in the production side of narrative, um, I was able to kind of protect my team. When more writers came on, when more narrative designers came on, I already had enough experience to kind of protect them from all the bad stuff and enough confidence to kind of to step up against bad decisions from management in as far as regarded my team. I wish we could have done it more holistically for everybody. That wasn't always possible. At least the leads who should have been taking those positions didn't always weren't always capable of doing it.
Right. And how do you feel that moving forward? Um, what do you feel like are your hopes for as a professional developer? Just personally, like knowing that okay, Atuel is done, and we're gonna keep making games at Matajuegos, but you're gonna take on, like you said, you're free to new projects and new things. And what do you hope for as a professional game developer uh, is the future of this industry, just as far as in, oh, I hope more studios have this kind of environment for me to work on, and have these
Right.
types of projects going on and these types of philosophies underlining their work.
Sure. I mean, the reason we started co-op is because we wanted to avoid everything that I just mentioned. We wanted everybody to have, equal voting power when it came to big decisions. We wanted everybody to be part owner of everything we do. We wanted, the thing about a co-op is that it's horizontal. So even though you have internal structures, you can structure things hierarchically if you want to within the co-op. If things go wrong, if somebody's messing janking stuff up, you can sit down and have a vote about it and say, okay, that person should probably not be doing these things, or we should change our structure, or we should have a conversation about it. Everybody's empowered to adjust things when need be. And I'd like more. I see a lot of co-ops rising up all across the games industry, and I'm very happy to see that. I'm very happy to see people recognizing their value, fighting for it, and recognizing also for creative creative ownership of what they make, which is also what a co-op allows you
Yeah.
at every level. The other thing, personally, just as a writer and narrative designer, I'm very happy to kind of see this renaissance of narrative, text heavy, interesting narrative games that have kind of risen up after Disco Elysium,
Yes.
and before it as well. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff being made, and
Yeah, but Disco
Atuel,
Elysium is one of those games that has a fantastic idea and execution, and was able to be awarded and
yeah,
by its merits in execution, not just in its concept.
right. It didn't win Best Idea. That's right.
Yes, exactly. People actually were kind enough,
Mm.
and maybe sincere enough to go, "Oh no, this is actually the best game,"
Yes.
not just,
And
"Oh,
so
it's a good idea."
So I'm very excited to see a lot of these games. Citizen Sleeper, Narco, all these games that are coming out. And I think the visual novel I feel better. I think Mask of the Rose, it looks amazing. And I'm very excited. I'd be very excited to work on projects like that. I don't know if Matajuegos specifically will be working on something like that's text heavy. But I'm also excited for the work we're doing in Matajuegos. I think at 12 kind of it was a leap beyond what we've done before, and as far as being able to really leverage surrealist images, really surrealist aesthetics, and
Surrealism
it's something.
is a big theme now in this show, because we were talking
Yeah.
with Sam
Mhm.
about immortality, and then he was talking about Dali and all the surrealist cinema movement, and I think, and I was telling him, like, I want more surrealism in games. Like, I want to know less of what's going on. I want to be
Yeah.
fed I want to be fed less of what's going on and be
Yes.
fed more of feelings. Like, I can't I really can't stand most narrative driven mainstream games, like, and what I mean narrative driven games, I mean those
Mhm.
super linear, I want
Yeah.
to be a movie stories, like Last of Us. Like, I never enjoyed any Last of Us game in my life, because it's
Right.
uh, just maybe the HBO show is going to be nice. Maybe it's because it's really just, you want to do a movie,
Yeah.
but you had to spend 1,000 years rigging 3D models and doing shaders for me to look at it. But like, and then I have to struggle through frustrating combat. Then I'll just drop the game and not see the rest of your story because I don't want to kill zombies. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of what games do in telling stories and making me feel things as a player is not in where I think the industry thinks it
No.
is. And I hope that more people making games are making games with that consciousness that I think you do have, and
No.
that's why I
Thank
wanted
you.
to have you on the show. So I don't know. This is not a question. I'm just patting both of ourselves on the back right now. But what do you hope to do in the in the immediate future? Do you have like kind of ideas? Are you guys like prototyping stuff about Juegos and stuff like that, or is it just you want to take a while to just like see what people are saying about Atuel and kind of engage with that dialogue.
I think so there's two answers there. There's the marketing answer, which I was taught by a journalist just a couple of days ago, Steph Zuccarelli, who's a great Argentine games journalist and does a bunch of other journalism as well. That whenever somebody asks you this question, you always have to answer, "We're doing some very exciting things that we can't speak about just yet,"
Oh, I'm very
and
excited
that
and
is
intrigued.
exactly that's the market. That's the answer. But the reality is, I'm very tired. Every time I just want to rest for a little while and then kind of start thinking about once kind of the fallout for 12 occurs. Although there's a couple things that are happening with the 12 in the future that I can't speak about because for some reason they're confidential. I don't understand. I've been
Yeah,
told they're confidential.
yeah,
Even
I get it. Yeah,
it's not a company either. That's the thing. It's not. It's because I. It's not a business. It's a festival. It has to do with a festival. The festival told me I can't speak about the festival just yet. I don't know why.
can't.
But anyways,
It's not
12 will be
festive to
around.
talk about things before their time.
I guess. Just a 12 will be around the world
Okay.
in a couple of different places in the future,
Will you
which
come
I'm very
to
happy
Will
about.
you come to Brazil to show the game?
So we were actually I have the bigger dish. Do you want a bigger dish? Cuz
Yes,
you
yes,
want more
bigger
shit.
dish, bigger dish.
So we were actually nominated for a prize at Big. Uh and we
That award has not made any people mad at all. That festival is going fine.
yeah, everything is great. Best independent games. Is that what
It
it's
is
called?
it still called that? It is. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think it's still
Uh
called that. I think they
Best
changed.
international games. You're right. It's
It
best
is. They changed it
international
because they were
games.
bought by some crypto bullshit company
Yeah.
this year.
Yes, that's why we didn't accept the nomination and didn't end up showing Toilet
I
Big. We
respect
said
that very much.
no.
But let me tell you that Big was before they even got bought out and changed their name after the pandemic. A lot of local developers had a lot of issues there, and
That's what I was told. Yeah.
yeah, there used to be like kind of these like whenever Big was in town, like other indie developers would just like find a bar or a restaurant that
Mm.
would host a night where everyone could just like showcase their games outside of Big, and you could
Yeah.
go there and just drink and eat and check out games and talk to developers. And that was way better and way nicer. And I got to meet a bunch of cool developers and see good games like that. But yeah, it certainly got even worse now. But we also have the
Brazilian game
BGS
show.
Brazilian
Yeah.
Game Show coming up. So that's why I asked because every company mysteriously decided that they were actually going to attend after announcing
Oh
they were
wow.
not going to attend. Then in the last like 2 weeks, they're like, "We are actually going to attend," and
It's a
apparently
twist.
the rumors abound that they were actually like kind of like just giving away booth space and going, please, oh my god, come back.
Mm.
And
Oh.
yeah, so because they're very apparently they feel threatened by the new Big, which is not just about indie games anymore. So now, so, and they feel threatened about the local Comic Con thing that has games in it as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's clearly the space you want to show Atuel. You want to have Atuel t-shirt cannons, stuff like that, ready
Yes.
for shows like that. But I hope more diverse and more accessible events come up now that we might be moving away from a very, 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 very neoliberal president to a less or
Yes.
so. Um,
I'm looking forward to that.
Me
Very much
too.
so.
Uh, but and hey, I hope you guys are working on some very cool and exciting ideas once you are done resting a bit on your laurels and your very much deserved awards
On our great ideas. I'm
and the
just
great exciting projects and ideas that are coming in the pipeline that we can't talk
yes.
about right now. And because this show has a gameplay element to it, and
No.
we must have something for the patrons of our
Yes.
show. We usually have we started the format as having always like a janky American game and a less
Hmm.
janky version of that approach from a non-American developer to kind of just like
Mhm.
rub their faces in it. And then when you start having developers on and stuff, just like very quickly, the format got very flexible. And today, talking to my producer Lucas, we were talking about how the most interesting thing is just having artists talk about other people's work, because you don't want
Yeah.
to just do DVD commentary on stuff, and we want people to actually check out Atuel first on their own, and then maybe come back to it after, and they can listen to this and read other interviews with you and the other developers. So one of the games you told me was an influence was
Mhm.
everything.
Yes.
So I thought about how we do a little gameplay sesh of everything, and we talk about
Please.
everything together. Cool.
Yes, I'd love. Yes, please. I'd love to.
Okay,
I'd love
let's do
to
that.
watch you
Okay,
play
so
everything.
all right. So if you're listening to the podcast, the free one, this is it. Ah, kisses. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Pablo, where can they follow you
Uh,
and know more about your games and your projects?
so you can follow me personally on Twitter at pf Quarta. That's PFQUARTA. That's my fancy last name that we mentioned at the beginning of the
Right?
podcast. It all comes around. You can follow the work we do at Matajuegos at matajuegos.coop. That's COOP. I'm sorry, it's underscore co-op
Right.
on Twitter. It's dot co-op on Instagram for whatever reason.
Ooh, no, big
Uh,
mistake. You gotta get those things in
no,
line.
one allows periods and the other one allows underscores. They didn't get it's not it wasn't our decision. It was their
No, but you gotta
decision.
you gotta get something that works on both.
Well, we'll figure that out for the next episode.
Oh, come
You can
on, big
figure
mistake. Big
you can what
mistake.
you can download Atuel for free on itch.io. You can just
Awesome.
search for Atuel on the search bar and you'll find it. It's the only one.
That's great.
Atuel Atuel.
Okay. All right, that's great. We'll everyone please do that. Support this show on Patreon if you haven't, and then you can see me and Pablo talking about a very influential game for his work in Atuel and a great game overall. Everything.